I went to 10 years of music school. That's 3 degrees and an artist diploma, undergrad, master's, doctorate. And I have spent more hours in rehearsals and practice rooms and lessons and classes than I can count. And the things that have stuck with me largely aren't the textbook knowledge that I gained in those classes. It's something a lot bigger. It isn't about being the best at your instrument. It isn't about what everyone says. And actually, I tried to follow what everyone said, and it made me deeply unhappy, to be honest. So today I'm sharing what I really learned about surviving a really intense, pressure-filled environment as a human being playing music, trying to navigate things. If you're new here, I'm Chelsea. I'm a flutist and a mindset coach for musicians, and I help musicians build confidence in their lives and careers so that they can actually love doing what they love. The first thing that I wish I'd known when I went to music school is that people use a lot of fear tactics to get you to practice and to get you to do things. A lot of teachers will say you'll never make it unless you practice 4 hours a day, you'll never be successful unless you do this, you'll never XYZ unless you do XYZ. Right? There's a lot of fear-based motivation going around. And it shows results in the short term, of course. But I bought into that for 10 years. And at the end of those 10 years, and amidst those 10 years, I felt myself burn out like crazy, not be motivated, feeling a ton of shame when I would practice and feeling so inadequate at times that I just didn't know what I was doing wrong because I was checking the boxes they were telling me to check and still feeling so insecure. I know a lot of musicians have this same experience where their teachers will say you have to do this or else you won't make it, or you have to do that or else you won't be good enough, or whatever that is. And I have to say that there are as many ways to make it and be good enough as there are people who have made it and been good enough. And you have to find your own way. You have to follow your excitement and curiosity. And if that means breaking the rules a little bit, that's okay. Remember that the degree you're getting is for you, not for someone else. It's not for your teacher. You get to get what you want out of the degree. And that's something I wish I had known sooner. And I think it would have helped my curiosity and helped me be more in charge of my own education. Number 2, you will not feel like you have time for deep work, but do it anyway. Trust me, there's that moment in your practice room where you know you need to either listen to the piece or look up a term in your music, or you need to really put your instrument down and clap and speak the rhythm. Do the deep work. Don't just gloss over things and get back to your technique or whatever you're doing. Do the deep work. Be curious. Be inquisitive. Choose the long way around because it will always help you. If you try to take shortcuts for learning a skill that your body has to learn, it's just not going to work. It's not like cramming for a test. You want to learn the language of music in a way that speaks to you, so you are fluent in phrasing, you are fluent in decision making, in interpretive decision making. Doing that in your practice room and bringing that to your teacher is going to be so much more fruitful than you just hoping you did it right, going to your lesson and asking them if it was good enough. Don't do that. You should always know if it was good enough. You decide that, and then you bring it to your teacher so that they can listen with their ears and tell you their perspective, because you probably want to borrow their ears. That's the whole reason you're there. Now, this next one is really important, and it's something that I think every musician does. Your value as a human has nothing to do with how well you play your instrument. Your instrument, like this thing, is a metal tube. What? I blow air into it and make sound waves. That's all it does. My value as a human is not just this. And I know that because I didn't come out of the womb playing the flute. I mean, almost, but like, I didn't. And neither did you, or whatever instrument you play or whatever you do. we oftentimes, because we dedicate our lives to our instruments, because we dedicate so much time and energy to these things, and we train for so long, we think we need to make our livelihood from playing the instrument. We completely go all in. It makes us think that all of a sudden, that's who we are. And that's how worthy we are. It's based on how well we do this one thing. And it's a trap that a lot of people fall into. But no, that worthiness in itself is a made-up concept, right? Like dogs don't ponder their worthiness to the world, right? So this is absolutely a human construct. But the deeper we get into degree programs, the deeper we get into the fishbowl of classical music, the deeper we get into this lens of just thinking that nothing else matters. If you think that your worthiness depends on the accolades you have as a musician, think again. I never felt worse than when I thought of myself as only a flute player and measured myself only as how I think successful flute players are. And that game is one of only comparison. And you literally, even if you are at the top of your game, will not have the exact same career as anyone else. You will not look like them, you will not sound like them, you will not have the same path. So anyone you look to as invalidating your own experience, it's nonsense. It's not required suffering for you to go through to get better. All you're doing is making another person's journey mean that you're not good enough. And that's something the brain does a lot, but it's not required to be successful, and I don't recommend it. Your value as a human is inherent and not tied to how well you play music. The next thing I learned was that when I was trying to prove myself, when I was trying to get all of these accolades, to win all these competitions, to do all these auditions, to do all this stuff, to prove that I was a good flutist, the person that I was really trying to prove that to was myself. That was a huge realization. I wanted other people to approve of me before I approved of me. So I did a ton of auditions and competitions and just countless amounts of applications for things, tapes, audition tapes, recitals, extra performances, so many things. And I look back on that and I think, well, yeah, why was I doing 2 competitions in 1 week again? That wasn't for me, because that wasn't comfortable. Why did I do 4 auditions in 1 month? That wasn't for me. I didn't want all of those jobs. I couldn't have. That was so I could get approval from other people so I could feel okay. Turns out, you can just choose yourself. You can just decide that you are good enough. And I want you to question, if you're in this spot right now, if you decided right now, or let's say you wake up tomorrow, you feel good enough about yourself, but you never want another thing, would that be enough for you? I think then you could maybe do a competition for fun if you like the repertoire or something and wanted to go to that city. Then your career gets to be much lighter. Then it gets to be fun, actually. But if you outsource your validation like that, it never feels good. Because even if you win, then you have to just chase the next win. All right, this next one really had to figure out, but you have to learn how you learn. And this goes for academics in school, which I don't actually think I learned well until graduate school, how I study, how I learn. I don't think that I had a good grasp of that. And I didn't check in with myself. I didn't ask myself, do I know this material, both in the classroom and in the practice room? I didn't check in. I didn't ask myself if I was comfortable with the knowledge, with the material, with the repertoire, etc. I just thought, could I do it? Could I maybe test well enough to get by? And it doesn't feel good. Check in with yourself. Experiment with how you learn, not just experimenting with different methods and hope that they'll work out. They might work, like you can play the passage, but do you feel comfortable? Is yourself in future you on stage, the version of you that's going to be on stage, are they comfortable? That's what you have to ask yourself. And if not, what else do you have to go over today that will help you feel comfortable on stage? What are those things? That's your work. Now this next one's a little controversial, okay? But you can choose to get a B. Did you know that? I think this is like a big flute player thing. We're all kind of type A people most of the time. I think I just kind of trained myself to be type A, but I kind of followed this without knowing this in undergrad. I sometimes would choose practice time over class time. If I had a Bio 101 lecture I could skip, or maybe I chose to not do something and I decided to practice instead, I owned that decision. I thought flute was more important than learning about plant biology. Whoops. And I think I was right about it. I'll own that. But if you feel like the thing that you're working toward, which is to be a performer, like if that is suffering because you have other homework and you want to have a life and have friends and like have an experience, know that something has got to give. It shouldn't be your sleep. And know that if you get a B, as long as it's not hurting your scholarship or anything, it's not the end of the world. You can choose that. You can deliberately not do things because once again, your education is for you. And I thought I needed more practice time during times when I had other classes sometimes. And I still feel very vulnerable about saying that on the internet, but you're allowed to get a B if you want to. Giving yourself agency and being in charge of your own education, that matters. Now finally, the most important thing to remember is that throughout this entire experience, you are cultivating a relationship with yourself. When do you have your own back? Are you in integrity with yourself? Can you trust yourself? Do you do what you say you're gonna do? Like if I say I'm gonna practice, do I hold that appointment with myself like I would a rehearsal? Do I give myself the luxury of ease and time when I practice so that I can feel comfortable for the next day's rehearsal? Do I spend a bit more time with my instrument if I need to feel comfortable for the next day? How can I intentionally cultivate a loving relationship with myself where I'm on my own team, I can trust myself, I can defend what I'm doing and who I am in a way that feels good, not because I get defensive? These things are so important because you spend so much time alone when you're in music school. You're in a small room by yourself with a mirror and your instrument. That's like most of music school. And so much can happen in that room. And it's a mental room too. If you don't feel safe to make errors, if you don't feel safe to make ugly sounds, if you don't feel safe to be around yourself, which is a point I got to, which was I felt so insecure and so unable to make mistakes that I didn't want to practice anymore. And that's what I think true burnout is, where you get to this point where you think nothing's ever going to be enough, so why bother? Because you've gotten there by telling yourself you're not good enough times where it becomes a belief, and that's how you're motivating yourself. And I have to tell you, like, getting to that spot, doing the thing that you love, that you've dedicated your life to, and now you think you're wildly inadequate at, is never fun. This is the kind of stuff I wish I had known in music school. It is not easy to go through a performance program or an ed program, really any music program. I think zooming out, giving yourself permission to see the bigger picture, knowing that you are at the beginning of your life in music. If you give up when you're 22, you give up like 50 more years of your career. That's so much opportunity, that's so much time, that's so much. Think about that. So if you're having a hard time in music school, know that it does get better. You get to create whatever kind of career that you want to from this place. I'll have another video about that coming out soon, and I'll link it below when it's all ready. But creating and having a life in music, to me now, after those 10 years, it's 100% worth it for me. And I love what I do. And I think it can be worth it to anyone who chooses to think so. But that's intentional on my part, because there are definitely moments and years I actually tried to quit. But that's for another video too. If you want support on your musical journey, I have a summer studio, a flute studio, flute lessons, mindset workshops, studio classes for flutists that are serious about changing their mindset. If this is something that you want to combine flute playing and learning and your relationship with your instrument and the mentality that goes along with a very beautiful relationship with your instrument, check out my summer studio. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a time for us to chat if it's something that you're interested in. If you like videos like this, please like and subscribe and tell your friends about it. I'd love to have you in the community, and I will see you next time.